Well, good morning, BridgeWay. So glad to have you. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Kyle. And can you believe that it is the end of January already? Okay, well, I can't believe, personally, that it's the end of January. We are 1/12 through 2018. My mind is blown by that fact. I apparently am the only one. So, today we are, as Will mentioned, concluding a series we've been in called Big Bets. But before we get there, I just want to first of all call out a couple of things that you need to know about. So last week, if you were here, Sam Bott was our guest speaker. It was an incredible time. He was challenging our guys all weekend at our men's advance. But the one thing you might not have known is that second service after last week, we baptized a total of 5 people over the course of the weekend. And I think we should give God some thanks for that. It's so incredible. Yeah, it's just been an awesome past couple of weeks. Yesterday, we had about 80 or 90 women in this room at our women's brunch. We had 120 guys last weekend at our men's advance. And it was just so cool to see how people are pressing in right at the beginning of the year. They're committing to growing spiritually, and it just seems like God is doing something, right? I don't know if you can feel this, but I just have this sense that God is doing something in our church. He is blessing us with growth and momentum, and so I'm just excited to see what God's doing and to be along for the ride. One thing, though, you could help, as we've been talking about, we've been growing a little bit, and so it's awesome. One thing you could do to help us out is that our second service, so this service you're in right now, is starting to get a little bit full. We're trying to add as many chairs as we possibly can, and so that helps. But if you would consider this, if there's anyone here who would consider coming to our first service, that would be a huge help to us to allow more people to come. Traditionally speaking, if you're a guest, you're more likely to come to our second service. So if you would do that, that's awesome. Don't worry, it's the same message, the same worship, and so you won't miss out on anything by coming to the 9:30 service. So maybe consider that. Well, today we are going to be concluding our series today called Big Bets. And so this month, we've been challenging our faith community here to take some big bets and to make some big risks. We talked about the first week is that our life is sort of like a stack of chips that you might get at a casino. And we take those chips and we invest them in different areas of our lives. And instead of spreading them out like many times we do, we've challenged you this month to make some big bets in a few key areas. The first week, we talked about what does it mean to make a big bet on the gospel. What does it mean to push all of our chips on the good news of what Jesus has done, both to live it and also to spread it? The second week, we talked about what does it mean to live our lives for the lost? What does it mean to take risks to reach people who don't know Jesus? And last week, Sam challenged us. Man, it was an incredible talk he gave about being devoted to the big 4. And if you missed that, you can look it up on our website. I would encourage you to do so. But this week, as our finale of this series, I want to simply challenge you to do one thing. I want to challenge you to make a big bet by joining a group. That is my goal for today. That is my agenda. You can know right at the top that I have an agenda today. You can just put that out of your mind. Sometimes we're concerned that, what's this guy's agenda? Well, I have an agenda. My agenda is to get you to sign up for a group. And to do that, I want to try to convince you of one simple fact today. I want to convince you this one simple thing. It's that circles are better than rows. Circles are better than rows. Now, if you're writing notes down, you're like, well, I just wrote that down. I have no idea what it means. Well, let me talk about it. First of all, rows. What are rows? Rows are what we are doing right now. Rows represent our Sunday morning experience. And I love rows. I love rows. Sunday is one of my favorite days of the week because it's such a unique opportunity when you think about it, right? Where else do you get to go in your life to be around a community of believers like we are here, where we get to celebrate what Jesus has done, where we get to worship like we get to here? Who here loves when Will and Elena lead us in worship, right? Yeah, exactly, right? So this is such an opportunity to do that in rows. Rows are great. I love rows because I make a living off preaching in rows. We take the offering in rows. We are all about rows at BridgeWay. We love doing it. But what you need to realize is that circles are greater than rows. So what's a circle? A circle is when we gather outside of a Sunday morning experience in someone's home or in a coffee shop where we get together and we are in small communities of people who can build relationships together. That's what a circle is. A circle is better than a row because, let's be honest, there's a lot of things that happen in rows that can't happen. Let me say that there's a lot of things that can happen in circles that will never happen in rows. What are some of those things? In circles, you can have intimate community that you cannot have in rows. If you are involved in a circle, if you are involved in a group, we call them connection groups at BridgeWay. If you are involved in a circle, people will know who you are. It won't just be a simple handshake, hey, how are you? Hope you had a great week. They will know who you are and your story. There will be people who understand what's going on in your life and what's happening in your family and who can be a support to you. They will know you much more than you can ever get to know someone in the context of a Sunday morning experience. You'll find accountability in circles. Right? How many people know that if you want to grow in anything, especially though as it relates to our spirituality, you have to have accountability. You have to have someone who's challenging you and saying, hey, how are you doing? Are you taking your next step? Are you applying what you've learned in your life? See, accountability, it's not a scary word. It's simply how are you helping someone else take their next step? In circles, you can have times where you can pray for one another. You can pray for the things that are going on in each other's lives, challenges that are happening. You can celebrate and thank God together for what's happening in your life and how He has blessed you. You can ask really tough questions in circles that you can't ask in rows. I dare you, try to ask a question to me right now. I'll say, I won't even acknowledge you. You can do certain things in circles that will never happen in rows. My goal today is to convince you that circles are better than rows. And what I love about what we're going to talk about today is I can guarantee you, and I know this because I found out in first service, you will not be able to disagree with what I say today on an intellectual level. What we are going to talk about here, we're going to look into Scripture. You will not be able to argue against it on an intellectual level, but you might try to argue against it on a practical level. But as I said, my agenda today is to get you to sign up for a group. And so if you have your Bibles with me, turn to Ecclesiastes chapter 4. We're going to read out of this book today, and Ecclesiastes is a book out of what's called the wisdom tradition in the Bible. It's written by, the book of Ecclesiastes is a compilation of sayings from King Solomon. If you've ever heard of King Solomon, he is the richest, most powerful, wisest man who has ever lived. And so what he has done is he makes certain observations about the world, and then he gives us wisdom to apply it into our lives. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to read one of these sayings, and you might think on the surface level, you say, well, that sounds very common. This is like common sense. I already know this stuff. But how many of us know that common sense isn't always all that common? And again, you will not disagree with anything I say today on an intellectual level, but you might try to disagree on a practical level. So what we're going to do is we're going to listen to what Solomon says here today. And I believe if you want to take action today, you will show this kind of wisdom that Solomon gives us. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at this verse. Now, in the book of Ecclesiastes, there is a reoccurring theme or phrase. Solomon looks out and he says, everything is meaningless under the sun. And then he talks about stuff, and it's kind of depressing, if I'm just being totally honest. So what we're going to find, though, is he actually begins this way. Let's read together in verse 7. He says, I observed yet another example of something that is meaningless under the sun. This is a case of a man who is all alone, without a child or a brother, yet who works hard to gain as much wealth as he can. But then he asks himself, who am I working for? Why am I giving up so much pleasure now? It's all so meaningless and depressing. And so what Solomon is doing is he's looking out, he's sort of making an observation. And this is an observation that you know to be true. He's effectively saying, what good is it to have all of the money and the success in the world and also to be alone at the same time? What good is it to chase after success and wealth and cars and vacations? Not those things are, of course, bad, but what good does it do to amass all of these things if at the end of the day you don't have anyone to share it with? See, we hear this story all the time. It's the same story over and over again. We hear about people who are fabulously wealthy and successful. They have millions and billions of dollars, and they've achieved things that many of us will never achieve. Yet on their deathbed, what do they want around them? They want their family. They want their friends. They want the people in their life who have made an impact on them, or vice versa. In other words, they want a circle around them. Is that not true? So what Solomon is saying here, he said, hey, the pursuit of all of these things is meaningless. And oftentimes, as we know, the pursuit itself can cause the alienation that makes it all meaningless. So he makes this observation, and then he continues. He starts to pivot to giving us wisdom. Okay, he says this. He says, 2 people are better off than 1, for they can help each other succeed. I know this to be true because I recently moved my family across the country. Now, what I did is I packed all of our, and by me, I mean we paid movers to do this, but they packed up the entire truck, right? So they put all of our couches and the TV and chairs and everything that we own into the back of this giant truck. And so I didn't have to worry about packing it, but when I got to our new house here in Texas, the night before, I opened up the back of the truck, and I'm like, oh my word. It was like a disaster. Everything I own was here, and I'm thinking, like, if I had to do this by myself, I probably couldn't do it, and if I could, I would certainly be in the crankiest mood in the history of mankind. But the next morning, many of you know this, that there was about a dozen people from BridgeWay who showed up at my house. And guess what? In about the course of 45 minutes, we had everything packed in. There was actually 4 shifts of people signed up, and we only needed the first ones. And we did so much that we started like putting up drapes and unpacking boxes. It was like, hey, let's just get it done. Why? Because 2 are better than 1. Who here would like to disagree with that? Yeah, exactly. If you disagree with it, I'm not helping you move your house next time. So, pretty obvious. Told you wouldn't disagree. But then listen to what he says. He says this now. He says, if one person falls, the other can reach out and help. So this is where it gets interesting. This is where it goes more than just helping someone build a fence or unpack a car. What Solomon is saying is, he says, hey, if you fall, someone can help you get back on your feet. Now, I don't claim divine inspiration here, and I take Scripture seriously, but I would feel comfortable restating this verse in the following way. When trouble comes, not if. If you are 8.5 years old or older, you would agree with me when I say that trouble is going to come. You are going to experience trips and falls. If it hasn't happened yet, you're just not old enough. Get ready, it's coming. Life's tough, get a helmet. Now this is interesting, right? So Solomon is saying that you are going to trip, you're going to fall, and whether it's because you tripped over something you did, maybe it was a bad decision you made, maybe it was an unwise choice, whatever it might be something that you did that you trip and fall over. It might be something else that someone else did, another bad decision that someone around you made that caused you to fall, but it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. Solomon is saying is get ready because it's coming. You might say, well, what is it? Well, that's just the problem. If you knew what it was, you wouldn't fall over it anyways. It's that eBay commercial. No one remembers that eBay commercial, clearly. Well, watch that commercial and that illustration will make much more sense. He's saying, get ready because it is coming. And if you have lived any kind of life, you understand that things are coming your way that are going to cause you to fall. So the best part about being in a group is that when you fall, there will be people around you to help get you up. Better yet, oftentimes people around you can see it coming in your life a mile before you can. And you know this to be true. You can talk to someone for maybe an hour. And if they are any kind of transparent, or if they're honest with you and they talk to you for an hour, you can see it coming in their life, can't you? Yeah, you can. You see how they interact with their spouse. You see how they spend their money. You see all of the things, and you say, it's coming. What Solomon is saying is that when you are in a group and in a circle, not only when you fall will someone be able to help you up, oftentimes groups can be preventative. If you are in accountability, if you are openly and transparently sharing with people who love and care about you, they will speak truth into your life and say, hey, I see it coming in your life, and you can do something about it. Who here disagrees with me? Told you. It says, but someone who falls alone is in real trouble. He's saying, hey, it's not the fall that's ultimately what's going to really cause you trouble. It's when you fall and you are alone, that's when the true danger is. And we know this to be true. How many times have you fallen and you know what? You're saying, I am in trouble if I do not have a circle of people or a group of people around me. Solomon's saying, hey, falls are going to come. But the true danger, what will really hurt you, is if you are alone when you fall. Then he changes the imagery here. He says, likewise, two people lying close together can keep each other warm. But how can one be warm alone? So who here has ever gone camping? And I don't mean like glamping. I mean like in a tent, in a sleeping bag. Some of you are like, yeah, I go camping in my 14-wheeler. That's not camping. Who here has ever camped out? Okay, good. There's like 4 of you. Okay, good. There's more. All right, so I love backpacking. I've been looking for places to go around here, but y'all have no mountains in this state. But I was camping, I was backpacking a few years ago, and I was up in the central desert in Oregon. And so it's high desert, so it's 8,000 or 9,000 feet, so it gets cold at night. But I was really excited because I had a brand new backpacking tent. It was a one-person tent, really small. And so I hop in there with my sleeping bag, and I'm feeling great. I'm excited. I got my new little piece of gear here, and I'm sleeping. And so I wake up, though, about 3 o'clock in the morning, and I am freezing. I'm like shivering. I realize I'm probably hypothermic to some degree. I was freezing because I found out in that moment that I'm a cold sleeper. And for me, my body does not emit enough body heat to keep me warm, even in a sleeping bag. That after a certain amount of time, I started to get really cold. I think this is what happens to us spiritually. If you are alone, your spiritual heat or your spiritual fire will eventually dwindle, and you'll start to feel really cold. If you are alone spiritually, if you are outside of community, give it some time, maybe weeks, maybe months, might be years. But eventually you will wake up and realize that I am cold. What Solomon is saying, hey, when you sleep, when you're laying next to someone, you will keep each other warm. And I have a funny analogy, but it's not appropriate for church. But I'm not going to use it. But you understand what I'm saying here. He's saying, hey, you've got to be close to one another because you will keep each other warm. You will sustain each other through those cold nights. Then he says this. He says, a person standing alone can be attacked and defeated, but two can stand back to back and conquer. Last weekend at the final session of our men's advance, Sam Bott presented a message, and he told us a story of a man named Jonathan. Now, Jonathan and his armor bearer, they went and attacked a force much larger than their own. There was 2 of them, and they attacked an outpost of 20 enemy, right? So 10-to-1 odds. Bad idea, right? You shouldn't do this. But it turns out they end up succeeding, and at the very end of the story, it says that Jonathan was killing from a front. He was the one leading the way, but his armor bearer was behind him. See, how many people here have ever been attacked spiritually? See, there's another word, if you look at a different translation, it says, you can be overwhelmed. I love that word. Who here has ever felt overwhelmed financially? Where you're trying to make ends meet, but it seems like the bills are always bigger than your income. You feel overwhelmed. Relationally, you feel overwhelmed. It seems like you can't get any traction. There's conflict on every side of you. Spiritually, sometimes we feel like we're getting overwhelmed. We realize that there's a weight and a heaviness. It feels like we are under attack. And Solomon is saying, hey, the attack is coming, but you don't have to be defeated. You don't have to be overwhelmed. And in fact, you can have victory and you can conquer if you have someone who's got your back. This is what Solomon is trying to tell us today. Then he concludes and he says, 3 are even better, for a triple braided cord is not easily broken. And I like to think that you can say that, yeah, more is better when it comes to community, but the way I choose to look at this is the third strand is what happens when a relationship is braided together around the Holy Spirit. That a faith community, people that are dedicated to each other, and our mission here at BridgeWay is to connect to God, connect to others, and to connect others to God. It's kind of like a 3-braided rope. He's saying that when this happens, you will not easily be broken if you are in a circle, because circles are better than rows. But you already knew all of this. You're not going to disagree with anything I'm going to say. You're not going to say, hey, life is better alone, that I'm just going to go at this in my rows, and I'm going to come to church once a month, and that's it for me. You're not going to make that argument. But you will practically try to disagree with me. You'll say, you know what, I would love to make a big bet on groups, but you know what, I had a bad experience once. I had a group leader who I didn't like, or someone else was really awkward in the group, and it was just kind of a weird thing. It's not for me. You might say, you know what, I agree with what you're saying, but I don't even have the chips to invest in a group because I'm too busy doing other things. What I want to do, though, is I want to challenge you today to take a step, and as we come to the end of our time together, I want to give you a thought, and then I want to ask you a question. The first thought is this, is that the time is now for groups. The time is now. Think about groups like saving for retirement. If you wait to start saving for retirement when you need it, it will not be there for you. In the same way that if you wait to get in a group until after it happens, and I don't know what it is for you, but it's coming, if you wait till after it happens, you will not receive our best. I tell you this, every week at staff meeting, we come together as a staff and we look at prayer requests that come in. We talk about you. We talk about what's happening in your life to the greatest degree that we can, at least. And oftentimes, there's never a week where we don't learn about someone who's been diagnosed with cancer. We never hear about, there's a time where someone gets sick. There's a time when someone is battling something difficult. Every week, we look through these stories. The first question we always ask is, who is their group leader? Now, here's the quick disclaimer. If something happens to you this week and you're not in a group, we want you to call us. You can call our phone number and we will do our best. We will have a pastor talk with you. We will pray for you. We will do everything that we can. We will do our best, but you will never receive our best unless you are consistently in a group. Why? It's because there's no way that in a group of 100 or hundreds of people like we have here that we will be able to know every one of your situations. But if you are in a group, I promise you that there will be a group leader and a circle of people around you who know who you are. They will know where you work. They will know your family situation. They will be able to care for you the way that you ought to be cared for. That only happens in a group. It only happens in a circle, and the time to join is now. Parents, let me just talk to parents real fast. If you have a middle or a high school student, you need to get your student here on Wednesday nights for Connect. Why? It's not because there's a great service and all of that, even though all of those things are true. It's because after we have worship and an engaging talk, your students meet in small groups. And guess what, my friends? It is coming for your students. Your students are dealing with more stress, with more pressure, with more depression, with more anxiety, with more relational and social pressures than we have ever experienced. It is more difficult to be a middle schooler or a high schooler today than it ever has. So why do we want you to get there? Because guess what? Every week, there will be at least one or probably two leaders, adult leaders, who know your student, who are going to ask them and are going to challenge them, and who are going to be there to listen to them when it comes for them. They're going to be surrounded by other students who can share about their struggles, who can share about the things that God is doing in their life and the challenges and the wins and the sorrows. They're going to share all of that together in a group. Too often, though, we say, hey, you know what? We just found out my student has a drug problem. Can you please help them? And we will do our best, but you will never receive our best unless you invest now. Make it a priority for your student to be here every Wednesday. Quite frankly, I know that there's lots of excuses and there's lots of things going on, but do it. I don't know any way else to tell you, because it is coming for your student, and when it comes, we want to be there to give them our best to get them through it. The time is now. Don't wait till you need it before you start to make investments. I want to leave you also with a question. The question is this: what if your blank made groups a priority before blank? Think about this. What if your dad made it a priority to be in our men's group? We call them P4 groups. What if your dad made it a priority to be involved in a men's group before it came out that he was struggling with the pornography addiction that could cost the marriage? What if your student had made it a priority to be in small groups every Wednesday before it came out that they were struggling with suicide and depression? What if your parents had made it a priority to be involved in a small group before things were on the rocks and they were calling the divorce attorneys? Fill in your own blank for a second. Then you might say, well, Kyle, there's no way you can guarantee me that by being in a group, the situation would have turned out any different. You know, it might have, my dad still might have had a pornography problem, the marriage might have still ended. Being in a group wouldn't have made any difference. And of course, I can't guarantee you that it would have. No one can promise you that. But if I concede your point, you have to concede that maybe being in a group would have made all the difference. Maybe being in a group, maybe being in a circle would have made all of the difference, realizing that, hey, as life comes at you, as you trip and fall, as it's coming for you, what if you were around what if a group of people were circling around you so that you didn't get overwhelmed and defeated, and in fact were able to conquer that situation? Come on. What if? You can't prove your point, I can't prove mine, but what if it would have made all of the difference in your life, or your parents' life, or your student's life? So today what I want to do is we're concluding our series, Big Bets, by me challenging you to join a group. What I want you to do right now is I want you to pull out this flyer. If you don't have one, you are sitting on it. What you will find here is this is a flyer we developed, and on the back of the flyer, or on the inside of the flyer rather, there is a list of every group that we offer. There are men's groups, there are family groups, there are women's groups, there are all sorts of groups. What I want you to do today is, if you do not currently attend a group, I want you to look at the group that you think might work the best. I want you to, on this little this kind of tears off, okay? I want you to write your name, your phone number, your email, and which group you are most interested in. I will tell you this: if you sign up for this group, you are not required to show up this week. We will simply use it as a way to get you some more information about it. So if you're not in a group, sign up for the one that you think would make the most sense for you. I realize that there might be people here who are in a group, and that is so exciting. I think that you realize what I'm saying is true, not on an intellectual level, but on a practical level. What I'd like you to do is if you are in a group, write your name, phone number, and email, which group you're in, and I would like you to write down something that you are grateful for about your group. So when you had a sickness, when you had a baby, whatever your blank is, that your group was there for you and what you are thankful for about that opportunity. And finally, what you can do is you can write down and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to commit to joining a group, but really the group that I'm looking for doesn't currently exist. I want you to, in the spot where it says, was there a group you didn't see on our list that you'd be more interested, write that down so that we can look and do our best to help meet that need through our groups. I am committed that BridgeWay Church is going to make big bets in the area of groups specifically. We will do the most and the best ministry in the context of circles more than we do in rows. Groups are going to be our silver bullet at BridgeWay Church to do ministry and to help you grow spiritually. We want you to help us help you, help us figure out what are the needs that we're experiencing. And you can do that today. And if you are in this room, I would like you to pull out, if you do not have one in your hand, pick it up right now. And if you don't want to participate, write something like, I don't want to participate on this piece of paper. I'm serious. In a moment, what we're going to do is you can fold this up like this if you don't want anyone to see, and we're going to have offering buckets pass by at the end of the service. And you can drop this flyer, drop this little pamphlet in the offering bucket, and we'll simply get involved, get in touch with more information. You're not signing up for a group, so if you're freaked out, just say, hey, I want more information on this group. And my friends, I am convinced that if you take this step, if you will commit to being in a circle, if you will commit to being in community, I believe that everything can change from that choice alone. If you choose to make a big bet in community, I guarantee you it will pay off in the long run. Why? Because circles are better than rows. Would you pray with me as we close today?